I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Christine. So welcome, everyone, to our second virtual presentation. This is quite exciting for us, a new mode. And one of the real pluses, one of the silver linings of needing to go virtual because of COVID-19 is that we can have people join us from across the province, not just from the Vancouver and the Lower Mainland for the sessions that we would have in public, but actually from across BC, including Vancouver Island, and also some attendees from across Canada, which is very exciting. So I know we are expecting someone joining us from Montreal, from Ottawa, from Saskatoon, Calgary, Edmonton. And so it's really exciting in that regard to be able to extend our learning community outside of the Lower Mainland. So today, I welcome all of you who are joining us online and welcome our exhibitors. We thank our exhibitors very, very much. And in the next few minutes, each of them will have an opportunity to present something of interest to you. So without further ado, let me welcome Jessica Wang and Nolan Deng from Loblaws. They are dietitians and they have something interesting to share with you. So over to you, Jessica and Nolan.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. So we're going.
Let's go.
Just, we might look a little bit weird wearing masks, especially since we're presenting to you virtually, but me and Nolan actually work out of different locations. So we wanted to make sure that we were safe, practicing safe physical distancing. And since we can't in this situation, we're wearing masks.
So just to quickly introduce ourselves, I'm Nolan. I'm the in-store dietitian for Loblaws City Market and Your Independent Grocers in Vancouver. And this is Jess, and she covers the Loblaws City Markets in North and West Vancouver. So as in-store dietitians, we get to work with a whole variety of different demographics. One of the main things we do is one-on-one consultations, nutrition consultations, where we provide personalized nutrition advice kind of based on the client's nutritional goals and wellness goals as well. One of the most unique things about our roles is that we also do group workshops where we get to use the store itself kind of as a classroom. Unfortunately, this is something that's on hold for the time being, but we are now starting to offer different virtual webinars, both free and paid ones. So if that's something you guys would be interested in learning more though, feel free to contact us later for a bit more information. And then one of my favorite things about the role is that we get to do a bunch of different nutrition events, things like going to schools or having school trips come in, doing workplace wellness events, or doing different outreach presentations as well. Now, before I pass it on to Jess, I am pleased to announce that we will have a prize draw at the end of our presentation, where 2 lucky participants will be winning a complimentary nutrition consultation and 30-minute follow-up with us. Now, off to Jess.
So Nolan mentioned as in-store dietitians, we are in a unique work environment where we can showcase a lot of work with food. We focus on practical applications of food, and so we really wanted to bring that to light and teach you healthy eating for healthy aging in food demonstration format, which is why we have all these bowls here. So as we go along today, we're going to be highlighting key nutrients that you need to be paying attention to by making a salmon salad. We're going to start it off with calcium. That's our first nutrient. And the reason why it's so important is because it helps with bone health. As we age, our bones break down faster than they can be rebuilt. So we do need to make sure that we get enough calcium each day. Great sources of calcium are dairy, such as yogurt, cheese, and milk. And in this recipe, one of our sources of calcium is yogurt. Other food sources of calcium include dark leafy green vegetables, broccoli, tofu, almonds, and actually canned fish with bones. A lot of people don't realize that you actually can consume the bones in canned fish because it's cooked to such a high temperature that the bones become really soft and brittle and easily digested. And in fact, you do need to consume the bone part of the canned fish in order for you to get enough calcium or in order for you to actually get the benefit of calcium from canned fish. So Nolan's just mixing the canned salmon with the Greek yogurt.
And I'd also suggest to continue the stirring. One of the nutrients I wanted to highlight is vitamin D. So that, of course, helps us absorb the calcium, like in the yogurt, for example. But it also helps our muscles and our immune system and our nerves just function correctly. It's actually quite difficult to get from food just because the amount of sources are very limited compared to a lot of other nutrients. So Health Canada recommends anyone over the age of 50 to take a supplement of 400 IU. That would be the dosage on a daily basis. In terms of what we can get vitamin D from, some other food sources would include milk, fortified milk alternatives like soy milk, oat milk, rice milk, all that sort of stuff, fatty fish, egg yolk, and fortified margarine. One important thing to keep in mind is with things like getting it from canned fish or things like the fortified milk alternatives, the amount of vitamin D can actually vary depending on the product. So it's really important to read the label itself just to double check that it is present. In our case, the canned salmon we're using has 35% of your daily value per 100 grams. So it's a pretty great source.
The next nutrient we'll talk about is protein, which is important for, of course, maintaining your muscle mass, but also helps to maintain good immune health as well and keeps you feeling fuller for a longer time. It's recommended to get about 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight daily, which means that if you're approximately 100 kilograms, you should be aiming for a range between 80 grams to 120 grams of protein each day. Great sources of protein include meat, of course, your beef, chicken, pork, but also fish, which is our main source of protein here in this recipe today. Dairy is included in protein foods, eggs, as well as legumes, lentils, nuts, and seeds.
And then the next nutrient I want to showcase is fiber. So this helps us to control our blood sugar, helps us prevent colon cancer, promotes our bowel movements, keeps them regular, and also helps to keep you feeling fuller for longer. So it adds that nice satiety after meals and between meals as well. So generally, men want to aim for about 30 grams of fiber a day, while women want to aim for 21 grams of fiber a day. But in reality, if you're not meeting that amount, every bit helps. So it's just important to get as much fiber as you can from your diet. In terms of sources, fiber basically comes from anything that's like plant-based bulk or roughage. So think fruits and vegetables, beans and lentils, nuts and seeds, and then just a variety of whole grain products. So whole grain cereals, or whole grains themselves like brown rice or quinoa, or something like oatmeal or whole grain bread. In this case, we are getting our fiber from whole grain crackers. And these ones are nice and super whole grainy, and they're like 2 grams of fiber per cracker there. So they'll really round out our meal here today.
I'm going to let Nolan actually add in the remainder of the ingredients. So we have here black pepper, there's Dijon mustard, capers, as well as green onion. And these really all help to add good flavor without adding much salt or sodium. And while he does that, I'm going to really wrap up the session by, and all the nutrients that we've talked about, by showcasing here the plate method, plate model, or even Canada's food guide. They're all very similar. It really encourages us to aim for half our meal vegetables, a quarter of our meal consisting of whole grains, and then a quarter of our meal consisting of lean protein. And this is really important because it helps to maximize and optimize our nutrition in each and every one of our meals. If you eat this way, it'll help to really check off all the boxes of the nutrients that you need to ensure that you get as you age. really bring that all together.
One thing that I also want to showcase isn't displayed in our recipe, but it's also equally as important as all these other nutrients, and that would be keeping yourself well hydrated. So this, of course, helps protect and cushion your joints. It also helps your body absorb different water-soluble nutrients, and it helps us regulate blood pressure as well. As people start to age, they may start to feel less thirsty despite still needing the same amount of fluid. So it's really important to just be, keeping tabs on yourself and how much water you are drinking. One other thing to consider is paying attention to the color of your urine. You generally want to aim for something like a pale yellow urine to kind of display that you are keeping yourself nice and hydrated there. So some sources of fluid and hydration, obviously water would be the big one, but you can get it from many other liquids, things like milk, things like herbal teas, soups, and fruits and vegetables as well. Those still count, right? Like if you're having a really juicy watermelon or really juicy fruit, for example, the liquid, the juice that you're getting from that still most certainly counts as hydration.
I just wanted to take a moment to show you our salmon salad here, and we've actually plated it nicely for you. Just as a sample, we have salmon salad on top of a whole grain cracker. So that's how you would enjoy it, either as a snack or as a meal. And we hope that this quick brief session was helpful for you today. But it's really important to, if you have specific nutrition goals that you're working toward, book that one-on-one consultation with us, because as you know, each one of you have unique needs, unique challenges, and unique eating habits. And you would get the most value out of your time with a dietitian when you sit down with us one-on-one, where we have dedicated time just for you so that we can analyze your diet and come up with tailored, unique recommendations just for you. I hope that some of the tips that we talked about were helpful for you today, and some maybe not so relevant. And when you do book that time with us, all of the time is spent just on you. If you're not really sure whether you would benefit from seeing a dietitian and booking that appointment, you can always reach out to each one of us. We can schedule in a free 15-minute consultation where we dive deeper into some of the nutrition goals you might be working toward, and think of a plan that might be well suited for you. At the end of today's presentations, I believe Christine will be sharing a series of handouts with each one of you, one of which will be our handout that includes the salmon salad recipe, a summary of the tips that we talked about today, as well as the nutrients, the top nutrients, and our contact information. So feel free to reach out to either Nolan or I to book that consultation, the free 15-minute consultation, and or if you want to be informed of our ongoing group webinars that we host regularly.
Wonderful. Thank you both. I think we probably have time for one or two quick questions. And so for those of you who are just looking for a bit of help, there is a hands up feature that you can see, and I've put a picture on the screen there for you. And we do have one question in the chat box, and it says, what Chinese dishes are easier to prepare and more nutritionally beneficial for my aging parents?
So right off the bat, the first thing that comes to mind for me is all those different Chinese and Asian greens, things like Chinese broccoli, so like gailan or jielan, things like bok choy, for example. Those are all super nutritious. They fall under the dark leafy greens category that we highlighted. They're actually a great source of calcium as well. Tofu as well captures the whole calcium piece. It captures the protein piece as well. So those are like right off the bat, any Chinese dish involving those will be an excellent thing.
And I would add to that, edamame beans are amazing as well. They're a great source of protein, and they are legumes, so they are high in fiber as well. But the key really is to make sure that your meal is well balanced as well. So not only the vegetable piece and the protein piece, but also whole grain, and ideally half your meal vegetables, a quarter of it protein, and a quarter of it whole grains.
And then one final thing to piggyback off that is we talked about like the plate model, and in a lot of like Asian cooking, food is served family style, and obviously you're not going to have your plate like this and laid out. You're going to be taking pieces from the central dishes back and forth. So that's just a general guideline, right? You want to be aiming for roughly eating half your meal being fruits and vegetables, a quarter of it being the protein, and then a quarter of it being your starch. Once again, you don't actually have to put it on the plate, just keep that kind of ratio in mind while you are serving yourself, and whoever's in charge of the cooking can try to, set the family up for success by preparing food that kind of reflects that ratio.
That's a great question. Yeah. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so we are going to move along, and Nolan, you did indicate that you have some prizes. And so we have 2 prize winners to announce today, and for our prize winners, we'll be in touch with you after the call to arrange to get this prize to you. And so thank you both to Nolan, Jessica, and Loblaws for this very lucky winner. And our first is Jan Thompson. And I'll be in touch with you, Jan. And the second is Patrick Tam. So thank you both, and congratulations. I do see that we had a number of other hands up, and we've kind of run out of time here, but if you don't mind emailing your questions when you get the little survey after the session, we'll connect with Jessica and Nolan and get some answers to you that we can include in the email package that comes out after the fact. So thank you very much for joining us. And we're going to make a little transition here to our next speaker, who is Sharon Johnson of the BC Community Response Network. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
So it's my pleasure today to introduce BC Association of Community Response Networks. In BC, oh, I've got to share the webcam, don't I? There we go. In BC, our mandate is under the Adult Guardianship Act. There. Our work is the prevention and awareness of abuse, neglect, and self-neglect of older and vulnerable adults by supporting coordinated community response networks and providing education programs and resources. It's BCCRN's vision to have safe communities where adults are valued, respected, and free from abuse and neglect. Community response networks are diverse groups of concerned citizens and service providers who work together to create a coordinated response to adult abuse, neglect, and self-neglect. The role of a community response network is addressing abuse and neglect. I went too far, sorry. Is addressing abuse and neglect as a community issue that affects everyone. They build awareness, build relationships, provide education about abuse, and advocate for support and services. However, a CRN does not manage individual cases or monitor and supervise designated agencies or provide legal advice. Presently, we have 80 CRNs reaching 232 communities throughout the province of BC, including those that focus on specific communities such as Indigenous, LGBTQ, Chinese, and Francophone. This is a busy time of year around the province. Oops, I did it again. As Monday, June 15th, is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and you will see lots of activities and the color purple as BC Place, Canada Place, Science World, and the Parliament buildings glow in purple. Our CRNs around the province are engaged in all kinds of activities to deliver the message about adult abuse, neglect, and self-neglect of older and vulnerable adults. This year, with the arrival of COVID-19, they have pivoted to virtual presentations, special meal delivery, proclamations to create awareness, educational and encouraging messages inserted into grocery deliveries, and many other creative methods to reach isolated and vulnerable adults. In a time of disaster, seniors and vulnerable adults are those who are at the highest risk and most impacted by abuse. Frauds and scams, social isolation, access to health care, on all forms of violence are exacerbated during times like this. As a bystander, one has a moral responsibility to report abuse. On a typical day, it is suggested that 1 in 5 older Canadians are subject to elder abuse. This includes abuse that is sexual, physical, psychological, and financial, and includes neglect and self-neglect. In this pandemic, we have also seen institutional abuse in seniors' housing or assisted living, hospitals, and care homes. To create awareness and education, BCCRN provides monthly learning events to share information, a monthly newsletter, a provincial website to share resources and mentoring, and a large variety of resource materials in multiple languages. Our 80 local CRNs are supported with current information and trends and are a go-to resource in local communities. We offer programs in community. It's Not Right, Neighbors, Friends, and Family features scenarios of abusive situations and how neighbors, friends, and family members can provide an appropriate response to these various forms of abuse. An alternative program, Gatekeeper, provides similar strategies to bystanders to recognize and respond to abuse. Community members, such as banks, mail delivery, storekeepers, for example, can benefit from this program. Providence Health is one of several designated agencies in the province of BC. Designated agencies also include the Health Authorities and Community Living BC. The role of these agencies is to investigate reports of abuse, liaise with the public guardian and trustee, report criminal offenses to the police, and obtain court orders and work to help adults manage their situation. It is sometimes necessary to work with police to remove abused adults to safety and health care. We must always remember that all adults should receive the most effective but least intrusive form of support when they are unable to care for themselves or their assets. Until the contrary is demonstrated, every adult is presumed capable of making decisions about personal care, health care, legal matters, and their own financial affairs. They have the right to live at risk as long as their rights do not infringe on others or expose themselves to harm. So please visit us at bccrns.ca and review our resources and be placed on our mailing list. Our programs and materials are provided at no charge for distribution throughout the province in fulfilling our mandate in creating awareness of and prevention of adult abuse, neglect, and self-neglect. And remember, legislation alone does not keep people safe. Communities keep people safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. At this time, you could use your hands up if you have any questions for Sharon, or we can take some questions through the chat box. Sharon, Shirley has a question for you. Shirley, I'm going to unmute you. All right, go ahead.
Sharon, are they volunteers that are helping in the network, or are they all paid people?
It's a combination of the people in the community. So there is a coordinator assigned, quite often appointed by a host agency, and they would gather up the interested people in the community, which could be service providers, it could be a Better at Home coordinator, it could be the RCMP. There would be a table in the community. Or if there's an existing table in the community that's functioning well, we may take a seat at that table. So it's a combination of what works in each community.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and another question is, how do you define self-neglect?
Self-neglect would be, and I go back to the slide that talks about every adult has a choice in how they want to live. So if you found a situation, for example, of hoarding would be a good example, where they're living in a lifestyle they've chosen, but it's a fire hazard and therefore it could be harmful to the adult or to the neighbors, for example, in case of fire. And in that case, the fire department might be the people that are called upon to respond to that case, those kinds of things. So if it's going to create harm to someone else or to themselves, then it's a case of self-neglect that would be something that needs to be addressed.
Sharon, thank you so much for joining us and for being brave to share your presentation of your side. That was great. We're all learning together. And we're just going to shift gears here to the Family Caregivers of British Columbia. And we'll have some materials from Sharon later on as well when we send the handouts.
Hello, everybody.
All right, so welcome to Lycia Rodrigues from Family Caregivers BC in Victoria, and we're pleased to welcome Stacey from Port Moody, if I'm not correct, here on our side of the water, so welcome. And just while I switch slides here, I know we had a physiotherapist with us last session and she gave us some great exercises. So if you need a moment just to wiggle around and stretch, I know we've all been sitting here anxiously, and that'll just give us a moment to focus again on our next presentation. All right, here we go.
All right. I want to thank you all for being here with us this afternoon, and I'm so happy to connect with familiar faces that today's familiar names. So thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lycia, and I am with Family Caregivers of BC. My colleague Stacey and I will talk about our services, our supports today, and we are so grateful for the opportunity to share with all of you what we are offering for caregivers in BC. So if we can move to the next slide, Christine, that would be great. Yes, thank you. So, you know, most of you probably know that close to 1 in 3 Canadians is an unpaid family caregiver or a friend caregiver, which is a big number. So this translates that into about 8 million Canadians across the country. So Canadian caregivers, it's a big number, and we need to be very aware about this big number and the big support they provide for their family members, their friends, and their community. And our organization, it's been about 30 years, actually this is our 30th year in BC that we're providing supports for family caregivers, for friends, caregivers. And our focus is on their ability to assess and navigate the healthcare system. We help them with creating personal networks, to gain skills, and to have more knowledge and confidence in their caregiver roles. In our organization, Family Caregivers of BC, we encourage caregivers to make a plan and to improve some aspects of their situation. In our work, we focus on 3 major areas. So one of them is the caregiver support. It's also education and also engagement and collaboration. And each one of these pillars, we have a specific support for caregivers. And Stacey is going to talk with you about the definition we offer in terms of what's the definition we use for family caregivers. And she's going to continue talking with you about the services we provide in Family Caregivers of BC. Thank you.
Thank you, Lycia. Hi, everyone. My name is Stacey Dawes. I am the Provincial Caregiver Engagement Lead at Family Caregivers of BC. As Lycia just mentioned, caregiving, it's a big number across Canada. And to give you some insight, there is about over 1 million caregivers within BC provincially. So some of you here today may identify with this role and may identify with this definition that we have here. So through Family Family Caregivers of BC, we define a family caregiver as a family member or friend who provides care and support to someone living with a disease, disability, or frailty due to aging. This role of a family caregiver is mutually determined by the people providing the care and support, as well as those who are receiving it. If we can just slip to the next slide. Thank you. So we do have a number of services available for family and friend unpaid caregivers. We have our biggest area of support is our caregiver support line. This support line is available from 8:30 to 7 p.m. And we did extend our hours just to acknowledge that not all caregivers are available to call throughout the day. Some caregivers out there are working throughout the day, and the only options that they have are in the evening. Other resources and services that we do have is caregiver coaching. And this is more of a one-on-one sort of work plan. So you meet with one of our coaches, you can self-refer through our caregiver support line, and you meet with one of our coaches and develop a plan, an action plan for navigating healthcare or supports for yourself. In addition, we do have virtual support groups that we have moved from being an in-person support group to now this virtual model, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, and we're now experiencing currently, right now. We have a local Greater Victoria, the virtual cafe support group, and we also do have a provincial virtual support group that meets weekly. The provincial support group meets on Wednesdays from 2 to 3:30, and our Victoria Virtual Cafe meets on Thursdays from 2 to 3:30. So just right after this, we're scooting on over to our support group. We also have live and recorded webinars that we have hosted currently and over the years. All of those are posted on our website as well as a blog, and we currently launched a podcast that we have 4 episodes up on our website for you to access. We have a number of articles and help sheets that are extremely useful, and we do develop a quarterly newsletter, which I will put up here for you. Caregiver Connection. And this is a hard copy that could be mailed to you if you subscribe to our organization. So I would like to end by saying that thank you for this opportunity to be with you today. Thank you to you for carving out this time to educate yourself, as well as thank you to all caregivers. For all of the selfless work that you do every day. We just want you to know that you are not alone, and we are here for you, and we hope that you do connect with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Now, we already have a comment in the chat box here. And it says, thanks for your support, Family Caregivers of BC. Appreciate your virtual support group via Zoom on Wednesday afternoons. Can this be expanded to include evening and weekend sessions?
Yes, that is something that we will hopefully be doing in the future. We see the need, we recognize the need, and it's something that we are most definitely working towards.
Yeah, and just a quick note, when you call our number, we also know about all support groups in BC. So sometimes there are programs out there in Prince George or in the interior. We have information about them, and we are more than happy to provide information about these specific support groups within your community. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And I know that there are lots of great resources up on the website, and it's quite easy to access links to everything that's going on in BC. So that's another resource for you.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight as well, through the caregiver support line, you can call, and you may call and not have questions. You don't even know what to ask. You're not even sure what you're looking for. And that is the benefit of reaching out to us, is that we will be able to guide you through all of the resources that we do have, and support you in that way. I know it can be overwhelming going to a website and seeing all of these different help sheets and different resources and navigating a website. So please, by calling us and having those conversations, we would be able to draw on what we know that we have and provide that to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us today. Lovely to have you here. And we're now going to transition to the Alzheimer's Society of BC. And we'll be joined by Avery.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Avery.
Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Avery, and I'm the Provincial Coordinator for Knowledge Mobilization at the Alzheimer's Society of BC. So thank you so much for having me here today. And thank you to all the previous presenters who have shared the important work you're doing. I've learned a lot. It's great to know there's so many supports and resources here in BC. So thank you so much. So the Alzheimer's Society of BC is a charitable organization that supports all British Columbians who are connected to dementia in some way. And even though our in-person programming is suspended temporarily due to the pandemic, I wanted to share some of the supports we have that you might be interested in. And all the information I share will be sent to you after the presentation, including links that you can follow. And some of the information I'm about to share will be part of our game afterwards, so make sure you listen closely. First of all, I wanted to talk about our First Link Dementia Helpline that you can see the number for and the information for down below me. So if you have any questions about Alzheimer's disease or other dementias, we really encourage you to call our First Link Dementia Helpline for information and support. And that's really for anyone with any connection to Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. And so as you can see here, we have service in English as well as Cantonese and Mandarin and Punjabi. And we've just extended the times for our English line to make that more accessible for everyone. We've been focusing on increasing our First Link calls as well to stay in touch with families and continue to provide support at this time. I also wanted to let you all know that we have weekly webinars on a range of topics. They're usually on Wednesdays at 2 p.m., but you can find all of that on our website. So some topics that are coming up in the next few weeks include a local researcher talking about his work on cognitive engagement, a webinar on delusions, hallucinations, and visual mistakes, and a webinar about living safely with dementia. So we have our live webinars and then also recorded webinars. And you can also find webinars in Punjabi in our recordings as well. Additionally, our website has been updated with COVID-related information. That's for people living with dementia, caregivers, and healthcare providers as well. And we continue to update that with different links and resources. So it's a great resource for you to check out. And then also I wanted to mention our quarterly newsletters, Connections and Insight, are out. So this is the spring edition, and that features stories on how people are doing in light of COVID, ways to get active at home, and activities you can do at home. So I noticed Mario Gregorio is in attendance today. So he's our editor for Insight, and he's on the leadership group of people living with dementia. He shares a story about connecting with his neighbors in the time of COVID. So there'll be a link where you can subscribe to receive them either digitally, or if you prefer print copy, they can be mailed to you. And we're now working on our summer issue. That should be out in early July. And in those editions, we're focusing on topics like self-care, loneliness, and mental health tips and resources. So if you subscribe now, you can get that next edition in early July. Now that I have some information out of the way, you might be wondering what this shiny thing behind me is. So that's our dementia wheel. We bring it to different events in the community. We've taken it to the PNE, we've taken it to Connects Games, We think of the wheel as a way to test your dementia IQ. So each number here corresponds to a question. And so I can spin it, see what question we land on, and a brave volunteer from the audience can answer the question. And we have some prizes. We have our little brain stress ball, which I found very useful working from home, fidgeting with that a little bit. We have pens, and then we also have our forget-me-not pin, which I'm wearing today. We usually wear it in January to commemorate Alzheimer's Awareness Month, but we wear it at events different times in the year. So, and if you were here last session, don't worry, I've updated the questions that were answered, so we won't get any repeats to keep it fresh. So would anyone like to volunteer? I can spin the wheel for you. You can answer the question and potentially win a prize.
All right, you could use your hands up button. We've got Kim.
Oh, perfect.
So,
okay.
Kim, I will unmute you, and Avery's going to give you your question here. Thank you.
Hi, Kim. Thanks for being a brave guinea pig for us here today.
Give it a whirl. Go, 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 big money.
Big money. Question 8. Okay. All right. Okay. What languages is our First Link Dementia Helpline available in?
Oh, geez. Punjabi, English,
Yeah.
French.
So you got 2 out of 3, which I think is a win. So yes, Punjabi, and then there's a Mandarin and Cantonese line and an English line. But I think that deserves a prize. So
I
will
appreciate
connect with you after.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have another volunteer? We have time for one more. Oh, hang on, there's something coming in the chat. Now we have a question, maybe not a volunteer for the game. Patrick would like to know, how are most families living with dementia dealing with COVID-19 these days?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Patrick. So we've heard different things from different people. So for some people, they're doing okay. You know, we have some people on our leadership group of people living with dementia that I've connected with, and for a lot of them, they're trying new technologies, Zoom, Skype, to stay connected and you know, still be part of their different leadership activities. For some families, it's been a really difficult time with different supports being put on hold, you know, not having that home care that they would generally have. So it's definitely a hard time for families, and we encourage people to call the First Link helpline to kind of troubleshoot some of those issues with us. But yeah, we've heard a range of experiences, but of course a difficult time for many of the families we're connected with. So thank you for asking that.
Awesome. And I believe your hand went up, or I'm not sure if you had a question or if you were volunteering for the game. I can unmute you.
For the game?
Okay.
For the game?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, here we go. Okay, that was 8 again, so I will go one more.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. True or false? Keeping your mind and body healthy can reduce your risk of developing dementia.
True.
Yes. Do you have anything that you do to stay healthy? Any examples?
Stay healthy, exercise, sleep well, and socialize, and keep up interest.
Yes, those are all amazing, amazing things. Yeah, exactly. So what we say at the Alzheimer's Society is dementia cannot be prevented entirely, but there are ways to reduce your risk. And a lot of the things you talked about, keeping your brain active, continuing to learn new things, staying socially active, like you mentioned, following a healthy diet. We had a great presentation earlier today. Staying physically active and getting adequate sleep. So you nailed it. So you definitely got the prize. Thank you.
All right, and we do have one more. Tom is having some problems, but we're going to do this typing back and forth. So if you want to spin the wheel, I'll put the question in the chat box and he can send us his answer.
Excellent. Okay, here we go. Okay, 7. I thought we were going to land on 8 again, and I was just confused if this wheel is rigged. All right. Okay, so this one is another true or false. And so the question is, true or false, forgetfulness is the only sign of dementia?
Tom says false.
False, yes, that's correct. So we say, you know, forgetfulness can be one sign, but other signs can include, you know, getting lost in familiar places, making questionable purchases, losing interest in things you once enjoyed, and having trouble finding the right words. Those can all be warning signs. So great job, Tom. You also won a prize.
Wonderful. Thank you, Avery. And thank you to the Alzheimer's Society of BC for partnering with us in delivering this series. We are going to take a bit of a break now, so you have a chance to refresh a beverage or get up and stretch. And we will be reconvening at 2 o'clock. We'll be hearing from Joanne Tate from Providence Healthcare, and of course, Maria from Alzheimer's Society of British Columbia, and our guest speaker, Dr. Eli Puterman. So please feel free to move around. You can mute yourselves while we go on break. And thank you, Avery, for being with us.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. All right, I have 2 o'clock. Welcome back, everyone. We hope everyone had a good little break in there, and we're very pleased at this point to welcome Joanne Tate, who's been our champion from Providence Healthcare. And Joanne, I'm just gonna see if we can turn on your video here. There we go, welcome.
Oh, thank you. So welcome, everyone. I am Joanne Tate, for those of you who don't know me. And I am delighted to welcome you to Providence Healthcare's second virtual dialogue on aging session in the 2020 series. We were off to a great start with our first session, and all of us adapting to this new way of connecting. You're now joining today from across the entire Lower Mainland and even further afield. We are pleased to be able to create this learning connection until we meet again in person. And goodness, I miss seeing each and every one of you in person. This is a very, very hard way of being. And at the same time, I'm so thrilled that we're able to create those opportunities of connection, because the human connection, this is what it is all about. Over the years, the Dialogue on Aging public presentation programs have continued to bring us together, bring together researchers, clinicians, other experts in the fields for engaging discussions on a wide range of health-related aging topics. We're including topics that you've told us are especially relevant to you at this time. And in this time of COVID and our pandemic, topics of today are incredibly important. I've enjoyed my previous conversations with you, and we've had discussions about the possibilities within elder care. And today I share with you that I absolutely will be continuing this work, this dedication, passion, and commitment. And if anything, this pandemic has highlighted the need for our vulnerable populations and the attention, the care, the services, the support, the partnerships, the funding that we need to truly change this healthcare system. So I am moving out of my Providence Healthcare roles that I have enjoyed immensely, bringing concepts like our dementia villages and our culture transformations like megamorphosis and such. And I'll be moving into a new executive director role that's newly created. And that is a leadership position with Vancouver Coastal Health, responsible for the long-term care, assisted living, and supported housing services, predominantly focused on our seniors and our vulnerable populations. So I am thrilled to welcome an amazing colleague of mine and someone who I continue to look forward to partner with, Maria Howard, the CEO of the Alzheimer Society of BC. And as our valued partner in this series, I welcome exhibitors who have pivoted to be here through technology. And Maria will now moderate this session. Enjoy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can see and hear me okay. Thank you, Joanne, for your introductory words. And I must say, from the Alzheimer Society of BC, we have so enjoyed working with you and your leadership at Providence. And while we will certainly miss you, we're so glad that you are not going far and not stepping out of the important sector that we are all here committed to support people living across the province with dementia and seniors and caregivers. So best of luck, but I know we will continue to be in touch. The Alzheimer Society of BC is so pleased to be a partner with Providence Healthcare for the Dialogue on Aging series, and especially now that they're virtual. It's a great new opportunity to reach out and join conversations, and I hope people are looking forward to this second session. I know I am. The Alzheimer Society of BC has a vision of a world without Alzheimer's, a world that really begins with a dementia-friendly society, a place where people feel safe, acknowledged, welcomed. And we know that in BC today, there are over 70,000 people who are living with a dementia. And so the ways that the Alzheimer's Society of BC are committed to developing that dementia-friendly society are really five really clear ways. The first one is we want to change the conversation, which is exactly what we're doing today. We're talking about dementia. We're talking about the myths and the stigmas and all the elements that are associated, and we are helping people understand how broad of a topic this is. But at the heart of it, though, we must always see the person first before we see the disease. We're changing the experience. We're ensuring that people who are living with dementia have the places that they can still continue to go, that they enjoy, that they want to be a part of. We want to make sure they have the support so they can still lead the life that they feel that they want to lead. We want to change the practice. We want to ensure that healthcare professionals and other professionals who support people living with dementia have the right tools and skills to ensure they are also increasing the experience for all. We want to change policy. We want to help people living with dementia raise their voice and advocate to the government so that the right policies and procedures at the municipal, provincial, and federal level are changed to reflect how we need the support. And we absolutely need to change the future, which is changing the way that research is being able to do their job and reach out and make a difference. And that really connects us here today. The society wants to ensure that researchers have the opportunity to connect with people who are living with the disease and understand the things that are important to them. But then we also want to ensure that researchers, the information and the knowledge that they're discovering and really beginning to know will make a difference is shared with people who are living with dementia so that they can put into practice and really, again, start to create that dementia-friendly society. We are so glad you're joining us here today to listen to Dr. Eli Puterman. And I think this is an excellent opportunity when we can learn from a researcher who has some really practical tips and resources and will help us think about how we are building a dementia-friendly society. Dr. Eli Puterman is an assistant professor at the UBC at the School of Kinesiology, and I hear that pretty soon he is going to be an associate professor with tenure starting July 1st. So congratulations! That's a pretty it's a pretty big achievement. So we're really pleased to hear that. He is also a Canadian Research Chair with the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research Scholars and has won a number of Young Scholar Awards through the School of Behavioral Medicine, the Academy of Behavioral Medicine, as well as international recognitions. Dr. Puterman research really focuses on the idea about a healthy lifestyle and an active lifestyle. And the fact that adults who pursue an active lifestyle demonstrate that during times of stress, that they show less physiological and psychological wear and tear than perhaps adults who are not as active. And it's a really key point to think about in time of pandemics and COVID-19 where we are today. This is a really important message to hear. And so we're really looking forward today to hearing from him and learn more about his research and some tips and resources for people who are at home, who are caregiving, who are living with dementia and other chronic health issues, and how we can continue to put active lifestyles at the forefront so our mood and our health continue to get the best daily support. So before I turn it over to Dr. Puterman, I'm just going to remind people that this session we will have questions at the end of the session. So I'd ask that you hold on to your questions, but near the end, please use the chat or the little right hand or the little hand at the right side of your screen to ask questions, and we will go from there. So welcome, Dr. Puterman.
Hi, can you all hear me? Hold on.
Loud and clear.
Perfect. And I will, beautiful, show this window. Hi, everyone. You can see the slides?
All good.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Maria. Thank you for this invitation from the Dialogue on Aging. This is, we've been collaborating, I think, for the past 6 months or almost, yeah, over 6 months in terms of collaboration in presentations when you supported the Healthy Aging seminar series that we put on at the School of Kinesiology, and I'm really happy to be part of this presentation and to be part of the series. So thank you very much to Mary Lou and Christine for inviting me. As was mentioned, my research area is on physical activity as a coping mechanism or as a coping strategy for dealing with high levels of stress in one's life. And there's no better time to be talking about this than during the COVID-19 crisis. I'm going to present some research on the idea of lifespan and health span. Just to, the word health span might not be a word that's very familiar to a lot of people. So I thought I'd just give like a little bit of where my head is at in terms of my research going forward, in terms of kind of elongating the period of time that we're healthy. And following that, I'll talk about some of the research that I have completed with family caregivers of Alzheimer's, patients with Alzheimer's. And finally, I will provide some tips, some resources on how to become a more physically active person during COVID-19, because it's a struggle for a lot of people, and it's a struggle even more for people who are currently vulnerable and for older adults. So when we think about the idea of health, we often think about how long are we living for? And we rarely conceptualize our lifespan as more than just how many years do we live, but how many years are we living healthily? And it really has become a major focus of a lot of research, is how many years do we live healthily, and how can we elongate or add more years of healthiness prior to the end of our lives? Because at the end of the day, we all do and have our lives end, which is some people are okay with it and some people are not, but it's about adding more years of healthy life before disease sets in. Trying to just switch to the next slide. So every year in the Lancet, there's an article that comes out about life expectancy at birth, and it gets updated every single year, and it looks at if you were born, so I'm gonna, if you look at the top left with the light blue, it looks at how many years, if someone was born in 1990, how many years would they live? Or how many years would they be healthy? And then how many years would they live is to the end of the little light orange bar. So I'm going to show you a little bit of an example. So what they do in the Lancet is every year they update this article where they compare it to 1990 levels. You know, how long do people live if they are born in 1990, and how many years of health do they have if they are born in 1990? And then they project it. If people are born in 2013, how long will they live if they were actually born in 2013? So kind of giving us like an idea of what happens with those extra 23 years of history in terms of people's health and lifespan. So let's take an example for Japan. So in Japan, men on the left and women on the right, in Japan, if you were born in 1990 as a boy, you're more likely to live until the age of 76. And for women, you're more likely to live to the age of 82 on average. But the health span is different. So how many years do they live healthily, even though their lifespan might be till the age of 76 in Japan? How many years are they healthy without disease? And that is 68 years for men and 73 years for women. So what you can see here is that in 1990, there's a difference where for a man, you might be living until you're 76, but 8 years earlier, you're likely to start having disease. Whereas for women, there's a 9-year difference between the health span and the lifespan. Now let's look at what happens for people who are born in 2013. So people born in 2013, their health span, which is in black, for men, for example, they might be healthy until they're 71. So they've increased the number of years of health by 3 years, and they've increased the number of years of life by 4 years. So while they might be living longer, it's not really that they're living healthy for longer periods of time. In fact, the amount of years between health and the end of life is 9 years for those born in 2013 if they were men, and 8 years if they were born in 1990. So while we think about, oh, people are living longer, that does not necessarily mean that they're living healthily longer. Similar statistics in the United States, where the health span for men was 63 years old in 1990, and the end of life for men born in 1990 was 72. And it's changed a little bit for men in the United States, but you can see again that there might be an increase in 4 years in the lifespan, but only an increase in 3 years for men in the health span, and for women it's only 2 years of an increase in the health span. So again, you can see that lifespan is increasing, health span is increasing, but the amount of years with disease are pretty much the same, if not getting more. In Canada, we have similar statistics, and where there's a good 10 years, where there's a health span to lifespan difference. And I will just quickly, try to figure out how to mouse and play a video for you.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide. The average Canadian will spend their last 10 years in sickness. Change your future at makehealthlast.ca.
So in Canada, we've had this campaign, the last 10 years campaign, for the past few years from the health agency. And it shows that we understand that there's this 10-year gap and that there's a need to improve the health of Canadians to live longer, but to live longer and more healthily. There were some ads that were put together, and they're pretty smart ads where someone's either kayaking or they're in their hospital bed or fishing versus with their IV bag. So it's an interesting ad campaign called Make Health Last, and you can visit some of their information from the Heart and Stroke Foundation. On the Heart and Stroke Foundation's website, they identified some specific lifestyle risk factors that, if not taken care of, will lead to an unhealthy last 10 years. So there's the unhealthy diet, physical inactivity, unhealthy weight, smoking, psychological stress, and excessive alcohol and drug abuse. And I think for many people, the idea of psychological stress being a risk factor for heart disease, you know, some people think that it's more hearsay, or some people think that it might be more, what people talk about, but that there's not a lot of research on it. But actually, the past 40 years of research has really seen a big boom in support on the idea that life stress, chronic stress, daily stress really impacts our health and well-being and our longevity across the lifespan. So the take-home message so far is that the quality of our lives is equally as important as the quantity of our life, and that health behaviors and stress matter. But for some, it's worse. And Joanne Tate had mentioned the word vulnerable population. So what is the definition of a vulnerable population? So according to the Canadian Medical Association Journal, or Canadian Medical Association, and they published this in 2018, is that they classify, and you'll see it in the yellow, that they classify vulnerable populations as those that experience adverse health outcomes compared with the general population by virtue of both internal and external factors. So it's not really that they're just unhealthy, but there's internal or external factors that are making them unhealthy. And those external factors or internal factors in the second yellowed part at the bottom, is that they seek to focus on groups for whom an additional factor such as poverty or isolation or discrimination or social disruption renders them vulnerable through inadequate delivery of effective health care. And when you think about the idea of vulnerable populations, we speak in Canada about Indigenous peoples, we speak in Canada about minority groups, invisible minority groups, or queer individuals, members from the LGBTQ community. We speak about women, we speak about those who are from low income. We also speak about older adults. Older adults is an area that has received a lot of attention on identifying that older adults really do face discrimination and social disruption and poverty and isolation, and they're also a vulnerable group. And if you look at Seniors First BC, which was formerly known as the BC Centre for Elder Advocacy and Support, they identify 3 risk factors that really contribute to the vulnerability in older adults. That's health status, their cognitive ability, and social network. So the poorer one's health status, the more disrupted their cognitive ability and the worse their social network, the greater their vulnerabilities, and that they've identified that in those who are especially over 85 years old have more vulnerability to exploitation or by institutions and individuals. One thing that we often speak about when we speak about vulnerable populations, we talk about the individual who is vulnerable. Caregivers are also vulnerable. Caregivers, family caregivers, are vulnerable to the same levels of isolation and poverty and discrimination and social isolation and lack of social support. There's difficulty for family caregivers as well. So let's look at some of the statistics about, and this was from 2012 from Stats Canada. So if you look at the first bullet, in 2012, 8 million Canadians, or 28% of the population aged 15 and over, were providing care to some family member or friends with a long-term health condition or a disability. Among these family caregivers, 39% were caring for a parent, 8% for a spouse or partner, and 5% for a child. Among regular caregivers, 38% of those who help their child report feeling depressed, and 34% who help their spouse reported feeling depressed, and 21% who help their parents were feeling depressed. Those are really high numbers compared to the general population. Among regular caregivers, 28% who cared for a child and 20% who cared for a spouse experienced financial difficulties, and 30% were receiving government financial assistance if they were providing care for a child, and caring for a spouse, 14% of them were. They also did a survey of psychological distress and health consequences in people who are providing care as a family member to a person who requires support. And what they found was that if you were providing care for a spouse or a son or daughter, the majority, well beyond if you were just providing care for a grandparent or friend or even for a parent, the majority were feeling tired, worried or anxious, overwhelmed, alone or isolated, angry, and many of them were feeling unhappy, depressed, with a loss of appetite, sleep problems in the majority of them, and some overall they report that their health suffers as well. And this is not just a Canadian issue. If you look at the research from around the globe, you'll find research across the globe showing that caregivers have higher levels of depression, high levels of stress and frustration, higher levels of harmful behaviors to self and to others, harmful behaviors including alcohol use, smoking, and so on, have worse health, they have increased risk of heart disease, twice as high levels of risk of heart disease, lower levels of self-care, and have an increased mortality rate by 63%. And the more hours that people provide, the worse all of these bullets actually are for caregivers. So the stress of caregiving is impacting their health, their diet, their activity levels, their weight, their smoking levels, their use of alcohol and drug use. These are all being impacted by stress. And actually, you can probably put arrows in between all of these boxes, kind of impacting each other. So, not to make light of it, but I put in a comic. So this person's prescribing exercise. Think of it as a stress pill that takes 30 minutes to swallow. When I think about, it's always a struggle for me when I talk about how do you help vulnerable populations and individuals who are vulnerable with exercise? How can, you know, how dare I, and I tell myself this all the time, how dare I say that just movement will actually fix our health and well-being, because at the end of the day, caregiving and family caregiving, which is a significant burden on these individuals, is really an institutional problem. It's a problem where governments are not supplying enough funds. It's a problem where family members, there's usually one family member taking on the entire responsibility of family caregiving, while the other children or siblings or whatever it is might be providing a lot less. So there are some institutional issues that I cannot address, that I do not address with my research, but I try to provide and create some community programming and community support for individuals who are vulnerable and individuals who are feeling a lot of high chronic stress in their lives. And one of my studies was a big study that I ran in San Francisco, but I continued when I was a faculty there, but I continued running from here in Vancouver when I transitioned here 5 years ago. I continued running it in San Francisco, so flying back and forth a lot. And that study sought to provide family caregivers with an exercise program to boost well-being and to boost their health. But before I get into that, I do want to talk about the idea that walking is really man's best friend. We all hear about some of the benefits of exercise. So exercise and moving more does reduce dementia by 30%, hip fractures by 68%, depression by 30%, reduces all-cause mortality by 30%, and reduces cardiovascular disease risk, type 2 diabetes, colon cancer, breast cancer. Physical activity is the one of the most wonderful behaviors that has an impact across the entire body and mind. So this brings me to the study. So the study that I completed in San Francisco, called the FAST study, or Fitness, Aging, and Stress study, was directed towards improving the fitness and family caregivers. So for a 6-month period, and you'll see this red block, for a 6-month period, we provided support to family caregivers. or not. So they were randomized to one or the two groups of either exercise support or asking them to kind of maintain their low levels of activity. We ensured that the participants who participated in our study were providing minimally 10 hours of care to a family member with Alzheimer's disease or with another type of dementia. We also ensured that they were high stress, so they reported higher than average levels of stress on a certain measure that is validated in the United States. And we also ensured that they were physically inactive, so they were not completing kind of the recommended CDC numbers of how many minutes of exercise they should get. In the beginning of the study, we oriented them, we enrolled them, and that's week 1. You'll see that on the left side. On week 2, we drew blood, we did baseline questionnaires, they filled out this thing called ecological assessments, and I'll tell you about them. And then they did their clinic visit where we did a cardiorespiratory test, and which is like a heart stress test. And then we did all the same parameters at the end of the survey. This is one of we provided our participants a free membership to the Y, our participant on the left who provided us rights to use this and share this image, and our trainer on the right who was a study appointed trainer who met with the participant on at the beginning of the study, gave them a rundown of how the YMCA works, kind of our goals for their study, for their participation, what they're wanting from the study themselves, what their goals for the study, and then weekly kept updating them on what their progress was. So at the beginning of the study, participants from the first week to the 9th week, you'll see, let's say the first row, you'll see that we kind of recommended 3 sessions of 20 minutes to get to the gym or to get outside and do some sort of workouts. We also kept them at the low levels of the moderate intensity levels so that they don't burn out too quickly or hurt their muscles too quickly or get exhausted too fast. And we told them to do about 60 minutes over the week. So the goal is, of course, to get them to 150 minutes by the end of this, by the 9th week of the study. So not the end of the study, but by the 9th week of the study. But we slowly helped them and supported them to get to that by telling them to diversify, to get more days in, to get longer sessions in, and to increase the intensity and their targeted heart rate, to increase it more and more through the 9 weeks, and then to kind of stabilize it. The CDC in the United States and in Canada and across the globe does recommend 150 minutes per week of moderate to vigorous intensity. So that was our goal for them, but we knew that most of them would not be able to just immediately launch into 150 minutes after not working out for years and feeling stressed from caregiving. Every single week, we downloaded their data, their workout data, because they wore devices when they were working out, and we downloaded their data. And every single week, we would send them a report of how many moderate minutes they did, how many vigorous minutes, how many light minutes they did, and we would tabulate it. And as you can see at the bottom, they did 199 minutes, and we would send them this congratulatory email with this report, with all this colorful report that would say, congratulations on exceeding your 150 minutes by 49 extra minutes this week. And we would give them a report that kind of showed what they did for the week. We would also include how they've been progressing throughout the whole study. And if they didn't reach the goal that we were hoping for, we would schedule a phone call. We would still congratulate them, because if your goal is 150 minutes and you do 20 minutes, it's still something to congratulate. It's still something to congratulate them for remaining in the study, even though they feel that they might not be reaching their goal. And we would call them and we would engage with them in a phone call to do this motivational interviewing, where we would talk about the facilitators and the barriers to being physically active, and what helped them get out for 20 minutes over the past week, what were the barriers, and what can they do about it, and come up with a plan for this coming week to get over these same type of barriers if they do appear. 4 times a week, we would send them text messages to remind them to be physically active, and we would typically send these text messages on the days that they said that they would be more likely to work out. So for example, here's an example. Today is a great day for a walk. Meet a friend for a brisk walk instead of coffee or lunch, etc. So what were the results? We published our first set of findings, I guess 2 years ago now, in a psychoneuroendocrinology. Aerobic exercise lengthens telomeres. So we focused on a cell aging mechanism. This article helped me win a Kurt Richter Award from the organization, from society. So that was really cool and awesome and fun. So what was our success? So in the group that was randomized to work out, we had at the 150 minutes per week goal, we had a 74% success rate in having these participants on average work out, or 73% of participants worked out at the goal of 150 minutes on a weekly basis throughout the entire study. If we reduced it a little bit, because some of this activity was moderate activity and some of it was vigorous, but we reduced it just a little bit to 120 minutes. So instead of, let's say, 5 days a week of 30 minutes, 4 days a week of 30 minutes, what we found was a higher success rate at about 82% in attaining on a weekly basis 120 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity. We found that their cardiorespiratory fitness improved in the exercisers, so they got, their heart got better, their lungs got better, and the control group did not change. They went down a little bit, but it was not a significant change. We also looked at this, so that's kind of like a traditional health marker. Yes, exercise works and it improves the heart and lungs, which makes sense. We also looked at this marker called telomeres, which is a cell aging marker. I won't get into too many details about it, but just know that the longer the telomeres, the healthier your immune system is, the more robust your immune system is. And I'll skip all this, but what we found was that in the control group, there was no change in the telomere length from beginning to end of the study, but in the group that exercised, we found a significant elongation of these telomeres. And that these differences, the elongation or the lengthening of the telomeres in the exercise group was different as a change compared to the control group, so what we call a treatment effect. So it seems to also not just impact physiological systems like the heart and the lungs, but also seems to be impacting the immune system and cell aging marker called telomere length. We also found that there was a significant drop in their perceived stress. There was a drop of 5 points in the perceived stress in the exercisers, and the control group had a change of 1 point on the scale, and this difference was also significant. There was also a change in BMI, where the weightless group continued increasing in their BMI, whereas the aerobic exercise kind of stabilized. We just recently published, published like a few weeks ago, is the effects of exercise with the same data, but looking at some psychological functioning measures. So looking at their depression and their caregiver burden and their mastery. And what we found was that for the control group or the treatment group, their depression went down, their caregiver burden went down, and their sense of mastery, their sense that they are in control of things in their lives in general, also actually increased. Whereas the control group, throughout the 6-month period, kind of stabilized. Their depression didn't really change, their caregiver burden didn't change, nor did their mastery. We also tracked during their days, 6 times a day, how they were feeling throughout the day. And we did it at the beginning of the study for 7 days and at the end of the study for 7 days. So we tracked it on the first day, and then we would randomly assess all these different things, like how much control do you feel right now in your day? How much are you ruminating about bad things in your day? How are you in a good mood or are you in a bad mood? And what we found was that, and I'm just going to get through this really quickly, what we found was that for all exercise participants, or on average, all the exercise participants decreased in their rumination, increased in their sense of control, and decreased in how bad of a negative mood they were in from the beginning of the study to the end of the study on a daily basis in their daily lives as they were going about their daily business. Whereas for the weightless group, their rumination didn't change, so how much they were dwelling on negative things repeatedly throughout the day, how much sense of control they felt during the day, did not change. And actually for that control group or the weightless group who got the intervention at 6 months, for those participants, their negative affect actually went up, or their negative mood went up. So the take home really is that exercise improves these traditional and novel markers of health. Exercise improves how we experience our days, and understanding our motivation barriers and facilitators for health behavior change is potentially essential based on the study, because we were able to get participants to engage in physical activity on a weekly basis more than other studies typically find. So how much exercise is good enough? So this is where the tips come in, and this is what you might be here for. So the tips, according to the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines for anyone listening who's 18 to 64 years old, is to achieve health benefits to achieve any health benefits, you have to engage in at least 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity aerobic exercise. Also beneficial to add muscle and bone strengthening, and the more physical activity provides greater health benefits. So yes, it recommends 150, but if you do 300, there's evidence to show it exponentially is increasing your health. So they talk about intensity. So what does moderate intensity mean? According to CSEP, and according to, this is not just the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology, but this is really the entire world talks about intensity. Moderate intensity is, makes you sweat a little and to breathe harder, and that's brisk walking and bike riding, whereas vigorous activity is jogging and cross-country skiing. So you are sweating, not just sweating a little, but you are sweating a lot and you're out of breath. If you are 65 and over, you'll see they used to recommend different types of exercise or different amounts of exercise for 65 years and older compared to younger, but it's kind of consolidating on the same message. 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous, beneficial to add muscle and bone strengthening activities at least 2 days per week, and those with poor mobility should perform physical activities to enhance balance and prevent falls. So that's added in here for 65 years and older. So again, they give the same kind of examples of brisk walking and biking for moderate activity, and for vigorous activity, cross-country skiing and swimming. So what can I tell you as a tip for if you're not being physically active? So I'd say one of the first things that we have to start with is to explore our motivation and to explore whether we really want to do it. So one of the most someone asks me, people have asked me, how can I get more physically active? How can I take better health? I'm like, do you want to? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, that's the first thing we need to know. Like, do you want to do this? So to exercise, for me to exercise, I want to get healthier. Some people might want to lose weight. I might want to grow my telomeres. I want to feel better because my research actually tells me, and also my experience of physical activities tells me I'm going to be in a better mood when I'm physically active, not just right after I'm physically active, but over the long term, if I'm physically active for weeks and weeks on end, I just feel much lighter in my mind. For many of you, you might want to be around for your grandkids or for your children, might want to feel more confident, want to live longer. My family wants me to be healthier, so those are some of the motivations. And what are the motivations not to exercise? I don't really have time, I have too much stress, I have no motivation, I'm too tired at the end of the long workday. Exercise is boring. Some people hate the gym, some people hate running. Some people don't know where to start, and so on. There's so many reasons, probably more reasons why not to exercise than why to exercise, really. So once we think through our motivation and we really can start balancing and having a tipping point where the pros of being physically active outweigh the cons of being physically active, or maybe they're equal, or maybe there's still more negative reasons, but it's much more important for you to take care of your health, then it's time to start planning. So it's weird to think about the idea that exercising, which should be fun, we also have to set some goals. So not just long-term goals of I want to improve my health, but short-term goals. I am going to be physically active 4 times this week. I am going to do it. It's going to make sure that it's specific. So I am going to use the app Down Dog, which is an app I'm going to tell you about shortly. I'm going to go for a walk for 30 minutes 4 times per week. It's measurable. I have my 30 minutes there. It was specific. It was exactly what I'm doing. It's attainable. So 30 minutes is definitely attainable. As opposed to, I'm going to go for a walk at some point today, and it's going to be, I think I'm going to maybe walk for about 3-4 hours because that's what my health needs. That's not as attainable for many individuals. It's realistic and it's timely. So it's time bound. So it's 30 minutes at 8 o'clock to 8:30. So they're called SMART goals. So setting a SMART goal around physical activity is actually really smart. This is my schedule, for example. I ensure that at 8 o'clock in the morning, every single morning I go down to the gym in my condo, and I use the gym 4 or 5 times a week for a 45-minute to an hour period. During this COVID pandemic, since I'm on council, I made sure that our gym stayed open and that only one person's allowed to use it at a time. So we have a whole sign-up sheet down there. But some people have told me that by having to sign up for that 1 hour block, they're actually using the gym so much more often than they were before, because it's no longer this vague, oh, I should go to the gym. It's more, oh, I put my name down on a piece of paper, I better show up. So calendaring it and putting it in your calendar is essential. Be realistic and start slowly. Many people think that they're going to start being physically active after years of not being physically active. They think, I am going to go 6 times a week to the gym, or 6 times a week I'm going to go for a walk, and my walks are going to be an hour, hour and a half, and they're going to be in the forest. And they are setting these very big goals, which are really lovely and really wonderful. But on day 2, when you haven't gone on Monday and now you're on day 2 and you thought you have to go 6 days a week and you didn't go on Tuesday either, and then Wednesday comes along and there's no more 6 days left, there's now only 5 days to the week, but you said you were going to do 6 days, you now feel like a failure. So we should be realistic and start slowly, not only because it's good for our body to start slowly and not push our body into such an extreme that we don't like it, but it's really important to be realistic so that we don't feel deflated if we fail in quotation marks, because doing even a day a week is really great. So that's, for example, this how we set it in our study, which was start off slowly, 3 days a week, 20 minutes a day, and then move up. So you have to plan for barriers. What's going to happen if you don't go on Tuesday at 8 o'clock? What is your solution? You have to think, what is your solution? How are you going to fix it or change it if you can't go and something ends up happening at 8 o'clock on Tuesday morning? What if you're feeling stressed out and you just want to watch television? How are you going to motivate yourself to get off the couch and go for a walk? So you have to plan for these barriers and think through them and work through them and kind of practice them in your head, so that when these barriers you're facing these barriers, you end up being able to overcome them because you practice them in your mind. And really think about it on all the other things you've ever changed in your life, and all of you have changed things for the better in your lives on some topic, whether it's work, family, home, cleaning, how clean you are in your household, whatever it is, you've all changed it, and you've all faced some sort of barrier to those first steps until it became a habit. And it's the same thing for physical activity. So explore what you like to do. So they mention on that website, the CSEP website, join a weekday community running group, go for a brisk walk around the block after dinner, take a dance class. They recommend all these different, and you can, you'll have these slides so you can go and look at the website from CSEP. But COVID-19 is offering these weird challenges where not only is it challenging if you're not typically active, but if you're mandated to stay at home and everything's closed, how are we supposed to join a gym class or a dance class? So it does offer a lot of challenges. So most of those on the list are things we cannot do other than going for a walk, maybe raking the lawn if you don't live at a condo, going for a nature hike on the weekend, taking the dog for a walk. Even hanging out with family until recently was a no-no in the province. So we weren't even able to go and be active with someone that we liked or that we were related to, who might be someone you like or not. So how, it becomes more of a challenge. So we have to become more, we have to come up with different solutions. So really, I think at this point for all adults, I think going for a walk and going for a brisk walk in nature on the seawall or wherever you live is probably the best solution for your health. There's also apps that you can download, like the 7-minute workout challenge. This one's a bit more difficult than this was, the 7-minute workout. They say within 7 minutes, if you do these 7 or 10 activities, you're going to be more physically fit, which is true. It's based on research. The Johnson & Johnson app is fantastic. If you want to work it at home, this Johnson & Johnson app has the 7-minute workout, the full workout, the beginner workout, so that's even easier, an intermediate level, strength workout. So they have all these different, from easy to moderate to high intensity types of 7-minute workouts. So you can really start on the easy end if you want to be working out at home. I've partnered, and I'll tell you about it in a moment. There's this app called Down Dog. The models, it's a video, so you're watching videos of people working out. Every time you work out, it's a completely different video. But there's yoga for beginners, there's high intensity interval training, there's the bar class, there's a 7-minute yoga, and there's also prenatal yoga if you know of any pregnant woman. So, you know, there are apps everywhere that really that you can download and work out from home. So here's Choose Your Practice on that Down Dog app, and you can be a beginner yoga person, and you can only do it for 10 minutes if you want. So it's really helpful to help people start slowly from their home. And you should diversify your portfolio. That's what I like about the Down Dog. You can do yoga, you can do HIIT, you can do bar classes. So every day is a whole completely different experience. You should include a walk in there. You should try and diversify your activities. And create memories. So one of the most important research out there shows that if you remember at the end, so everyone does a bout of exercise, and if you stay in the moderate to vigorous level, you're actually feeling really good at the end of it. And if you can remember how good you felt at the end of that bout of exercise and make it an explicit memory, it will motivate you to become more physically, or to engage in another bout at another time. So just remembering that it felt really good is really important. During it might not be the most comfortable, but most everyone feels better after. And you should adapt. So this is how many of us think. If at first I don't succeed, then I just suck. I can't be physically active, but that is not true. You just have to redefine your goals. If 150 minutes doesn't work for you, bring it down to 30 for the week. Be realistic, schedule it, identify your barriers and what helps you. Remember your motivation and also the good times, and bounce back and try again. And that's the most important. So just to wrap up, I just want to identify 2 studies that we're doing at UBC. You might be interested in participating. One of them I'm the principal investigator on. If you're between 18 and 64, or if you know people between 18 and 64, we're using the Down Dog app, and people will be either doing yoga or high intensity interval training for 6 weeks at home during this pandemic to improve physical activity levels, but improve well-being during this stressful time. And then this is probably more in line with for many of you, if you're 65 years and older. It's a 12-week program to increase levels of physical activity at home. And this is from my colleague, Dr. Mark Beauchamp, and I'm one of the investigators on this one, and it's called the Seniors COVID. So mine was called the COVID pandemic, the COPE trial, and his is called the SCOPE trial. And this is for older adults to be physically active at home using their computer on either live classes with an instructor on live or to be or get videos that are just in a folder online that you can download and use. And with that, I just wanted to thank you. Thank my funders who helped build my lab, and all the people who supported my caregiving study in the United States. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Puterman. What a great presentation, and I have to say, really informative and motivating. And I think that's what we often hear when we talk to people about being at home, is how you can get one's physical activity going, and motivation is a big thing. But I love the way that you talked about how not to sort of get discouraged if it doesn't work one day or the goal seems too big, but just to keep doing something and keep moving forward. So that's great. Thank you so much. We have a bit of time for questions. Christine is going to help us with those. And again, please raise your little right hand or your button on the right hand side, or type in a chat question. So Christine, what do we have for questions?
So I'm going to unmute. We have Donna, and Donna, I'm going to unmute you there. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much, Eli. I facilitate it occasionally too, and you did a great job today. But you fired off the scope trial too fast. I'm interested
Okay, yeah.
in being involved in that. Could you give it that email again?
Yeah,
Or
so
what
if
about
you're
an old-fashioned phone number?
Old-fashioned phone number, let me tell you the old-fashioned phone number. It's actually not on here, but if you go, you can email kin.scope, so kin as in kinesiology, K-I-N, .scope, S-C-O-P-E, at ubc.ca.
Yeah, great.
Just email them that you're interested.
Thank you.
In the study. You can also look for more information to see if you're eligible by looking at scopetrial2020.ca.
Okay.
If you want to just get a bit more information about the study, about the different randomization procedures and whether you're eligible or not, and so on. So definitely, if you're interested in it, I would contact. It's a really, Mark Beauchamp, my colleague, you may have heard a few years ago of someone who started at the YMCA's program for older adults, teaching older adults aerobic exercise, leading to like more attendance at more classes at the YMCA because it's older adults teaching older adults. He was the PI of that study. When the study ended, there were so many people who were so angry that the Y ended the classes because the study ended, that the Y actually created an entire like now you can go to YMCA's and have those kind of classes. So he's been focused for a dozen years on maintaining the health of older adults in Canada.
And Eli, one more question. You just focused on caregivers. Has anyone doing research on just the people like who have grandchildren and children that you're inherited for the rest of your life? Those kinds of things, not caregivers, but people that are dealing with the reality of life.
Oh, right. Not in terms of physical activity. I don't know anyone.
Okay.
So there's a lot of research in health psychology looking at parents who are providing care to children with health conditions, physical or mental health conditions. So there's a lot of work on that. Most of the research in health psychology has really focused on like social support mechanisms or even mindfulness techniques. I can't think of any that has looked at physical activity levels and in changing physical activity. My next study that I've just proposed isn't with caregivers. My next study is vulnerable women living with HIV. And creating a dance program at local organizations to try and use dance to kind of create social cohesion and reduce isolation and improve health and well-being in women living with HIV. So once that starts, I'm going to probably propose another family caregiver study soon enough to keep that track going also.
Awesome, thank you. Eli, the next question is, what are your guidelines for seniors over 75 and up for exercise?
They're the same as for 65 and up. It's 150 minutes they suggest. They suggest using, moving their muscles and bones twice a week minimally, and also doing flexibility types of workouts. When we think about moving your muscles and bones, like I used to lift heavy weights because you're in your 20s and 30s and that's what you want to do is have bigger muscles. For the past 2-3 years, all I've been doing is workouts that using the Down Dog app or other apps that I've used in the past that just make me balance on one foot, or make me balance on one foot and then bend over and touch my toes and do some squats. And all those are really great for flexibility. All of them are really great for improving cardiovascular health as well, because when you're doing a squat up and down, you're not just balancing, but you're also increasing your cardiovascular function and also your heart rate and your lungs capacity, and you're needing, it's aerobic exercise at the same time as doing flexibility. So that's what's really great about some of these apps I suggested, like Down Dog or and the 7-minute workout, is that it's kind of working on all of these different pieces at the same time: the muscles, the bones, the flexibility, and finding one that's right for older adults. I would stick with the Johnson & Johnson one. That's the one when I did a big search online for seniors. It was recommended that the Johnson & Johnson one is the best for seniors or older.
Awesome, thank you. Now we have another question here. How do we create and fund a model whereby the 24/7 caregiver gets 5 half days of home and night nursing support, so there's actually time for rest, exercise, self-care, etc.?
Can I turn that over to Maria?
It's a great question, and certainly it's one that requires many partners coming together to support, so that respite and programs for people living with dementia can also be participating in, and hence the program, the Minds in Motion program that the Society runs, and other exercise programs that are run, such as through UBC, are so important so that people can have a chance to get the rest they need to exercise, but also people living with dementia can have an opportunity to exercise and have the social interaction as well.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay. Well, again, what a great session, and thanks, Dr. Puterman. I mean, it's just a lot of good information to think about and consider, and you know, it is very promising to see there are so many options that are being made available for people to help them depending on their situation, and certainly technology has made a big difference in making that availability. But as you said, it's still the internal motivation that often can be our biggest barriers. So, you know, the ability to use apps where there's motivations from other people is so important. I just thank you so much for your presentation today, and also a big thanks to the sponsors who have joined us, and Providence Healthcare for putting on the Dialogue on Aging. It's our second virtual session in the series, and next in 2 weeks on June 25th, we will have the third at 1 p.m. So we really hope everyone who joined us today can join us again on the 25th. And I believe there's someone actually from way out of town joining us today from down in the US. So that's really exciting to have an international reach here. And on the 25th, we're going to hear from Dr. Julie Robillard, a very well-known name as well, from UBC, and she's going to talk about a presentation called "The Future is Here: Choosing New Technology to Help with Healthy Brain Aging." And many of you who may know Julie know she also has a passion for robotics. So I know that's going to be another great session in the series. So thank you again for joining us. This session has been recorded and will be up on the public website of the Dialogue on Aging in a few days. And so we welcome you to go back and take a look. And I know too that if you need to contact Dr. Puterman through his address with UBC, I'm sure he'll be willing to help share some more resources if necessary. So thank you again, and in the words of Dr. Bonnie Henry, I'm going to borrow, be kind, be calm, and be safe. Thank you, everyone.